Greetings, Mom Amy. I sent you an email this morning. Let's see here. All right. I'm not sure. You said the notification for this didn't come through? I'm not sure. Hmm. Okay. Well, I'm not sure about why the notification didn't come through for today's service, but we're gonna just start. All right. So today, thank you all for tuning in. My name is Cassandra Faye Floyd. I am also known as the daughter of the Fates. Um, yes. So today is our regularly scheduled temple service that happens every Saturday at 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. And today's topic is one that I feel like I want to start addressing. I don't know that today is going to be like fully as deep as I would like it to be, but we're going to start and just keep working on it. So today's topic is on the concept of cults. And the reason that this topic is important, well, there's a number of reasons that this topic is important to me, but most pressing is that, we are in the process of establishing a new order. As the Temple of Evolutionary Emergence, we are in the process of paving a new way, of establishing a new norm. When I went through the process of getting the temple federally recognized, it is recognized as a new religion. That's how I approached building the Temple of Evolutionary Emergence. And with that comes the ever now and again inbox that I get about what I am trying to build as a cult. And I have made mention several times on my channel that I used to joke about creating a cult for some time, 6 years or so. I was like, fuck it, I'm just gonna create a cult. That's the only way people listen. whatever. But that is not that ain't what we're trying to do. And so what I decided was several things. I've talked to you guys about the need for us to really be deliberate about the language that we use in all areas, right? To be more mindful and even more methodical about the kind of language that we use, how we use language. I am almost obsessive about it. Like, greetings, Carlotta. Within the context of the Temple of Evolutionary Emergence, I've been struggling with it. I actually mentioned last week, the need for the establishment of a new way to communicate, because I don't want the temple to be associated with anything, quote, religious, anything, quote, cultish, right? And so when I talk about these things, I I've watched I've been obsessed with cults for a long time, and there's a reason that I've been obsessed with cults for a long time. It is because, as I've mentioned many times before, I was born into one of the most infamous end of the world cults of the 1970s. And the leader of this cult, the famed David Terrell, is accredited with inspiring several more well-known cult leaders. That's where they fashioned their shit after, was the cult leader that that led the cult that I was born into. And so Jim Jones was said to have been influenced by David Terrell. David Koresh was said to have been influenced by David Terrell. I remember this man's face clearly, and I was 5 years old when my parents left that cult, and I still remember his voice. I still remember his face. I still remember the little trailer on the land that he bought that we lived in. I remember everything about that period in my life. Anyway, so that's the reason that I have been fascinated with cults most of my life. And so there aren't too many documentaries I haven't seen about modern cults, about the history of cults in the United States. But I felt like all of these documentaries have been really well made. They've been very well done in terms of providing information about the histories of these cults. What they don't do, none of them, not one, what they don't do is talk about what it is in the world. Because what it is in the world, especially now, over the last 150 years, what is it that has primed cults? What is it that gives rise to cults? What is happening socially in the world at the moment, or at the time, where cults seem to emerge in mass? Because right now, that's the talk, is that since about 2008, we've been in this place where we've seen a quote an explosion of cults. There aren't any that I have seen, any documentaries that offer a social, political, historical analysis about why hell, and an astrological analysis about why particular times in history gave rise to an explosion of cults. One of those periods in time being the one that we're in right now, right? And so I wanted to approach this subject in a way that I could offer my 2 cents by providing at least a base level analysis of the historical, the political, the social, the astrological contributing factors that give rise in any particular period to the explosion of cults. Okay? That was a pretty big mouthy introduction, but I'm sure you follow. So, as detailed by the thumbnail associated with this presentation that I'm going to make today, and I think I'm going to keep it short. I'll be honest, I'm still kind of tired. Like the moon and the hike and the 7 planets in retrograde, and today it's really beautifully gloomy outside. Like it's really overcast, which damn near never happens in LA. I'm feeling away. I'm feeling a way that is like maybe I need to spend the day with all my windows open, sitting on the couch with a bottle of wine and a bowl of ice cream kind of day. So I will see how spirit moves me, but right now I'm thinking I might just entertain this discussion for an hour, maybe the full 2 hours, but more than likely an hour. So anyway, as detailed by the thumbnail on that was promoting today's talk, is the little promo for whoever is tuning in on Facebook. I do, for whatever reason, StreamYard doesn't let me see who it is. Shout me out. Let me know who it is that's tuning in from Facebook. I don't know why that happens, but I can see everybody that tunes in from YouTube, but from Facebook, it doesn't show your picture or your name. So let me know who it is. So anyway, I watched this documentary. I'm probably going to watch it again today. But even when I watched it the first time, which was like 2 weeks ago, okay, hey, Annie. Even when I watched it a couple of weeks ago, I was taking notes like a crazy person, right? The name of the documentary is How to Become a Cult Leader. And it's written satirically, but it is detailing the rise and falls of the most popular cult leaders and what gave rise to the cults that they created and what contributed to their eventual demise, and quote, what not to do if you want to become a successful cult leader, right? And that's where the satire comes in. It's actually quite funny. It's a very informative documentary, but it's done, very lightheartedly. I mean, as lighthearted as you can be when talking about the most infamous cults of this country over the last 100 years. So anyway, so I want to talk about that a little bit, this documentary, How to Become a Cult Leader. I want to talk about my origins, having been born to parents that were hauled into a cult by their parents, because my parents were young when they married and had me. My parents were 16 when they married and 17 when they had me in this cult. And like I said, I was 5 years old when my parents finally left the cult. So I'll talk about that a little bit and why David Terrell, who is ancient as Methuselah, still alive, still running a church in Texas, is still so very popular, So I'll talk about that. His stepdaughter, as a matter of fact, I haven't read the book. I've been kind of scared to read the book, but his stepdaughter, David Terrell's stepdaughter, wrote a book called Holy Ghost Girl a few years ago, maybe 5 years ago or so, about her life in the cult that I grew up in. David Terrell was her stepfather. And so I have the book. I've just been, child, when I tell you I've been scared to crack the spine open on this book. Yeah. Because I'll be honest, I'm always upfront and forthright and probably a little bit too revealing for all of you. But the reason that my parents left that cult is because I was abused in that cult. They found out that I was abused in that cult. So they left. But there are clear images that I have of my time as a little girl in that institution. So we'll talk about that a little bit. We'll talk about, as the Temple of Evolutionary Emergence, being able, not just me. And so what I want to do is, in the future, in the near future, start having more interactive discussions instead of me talking one directionally. Start having more interactive, but they'll have to be closed meetings, because the last time I got a little I got a little timid, because I've been doing Zoom conferences for a long time. And the last time I did a Zoom conference that I made public, that I made open, I had these terrible, terrible trolls, invading the process. It was really vicious. It was really malignant. And I, I would like to do like personal, just like I was doing with the book club. You know what I'm saying? Like, if you sign up for the book club, remember when we were reading The Great Cosmic Mother, you sign up for the book club, I give you the link to the Zoom. And the only way you can get into the Zoom is if if you have signed up for the book club, whatever. So doing like study sessions that way to make sure that what we're trying to do is not, impeded upon by trolls. But in the meantime, I'm saying that because when I talk to you, when I talk to the members of the Temple of Evolutionary Emergence about how we are going to have to be able to articulate the aims, the objectives, the vision, the mission that we have as the Temple of Evolutionary Emergence. What is the Temple of Evolutionary Emergence? How did you come to determine that this was what you needed to do, was to create a new religion in a world like this, right? And so, these are some of the things that I want to talk about. I want to start by talking about this documentary called "How to Become a Cult Leader." Some of the people that were detailed, the primary leaders that they focused on was Jim Jones, Marshall Applewhite, what's his name? Yami Gomez, Soon Myung Moon, Shoko Ashihara. Who else? They were honorable, what they call honorable mentions throughout. So that's who I'm skipping over. Keith Rainier. And I think those were the primary bigs. Some of the honorable mentions were David Koresh, Mario Pianesi, Henrik von Gene, Montcalm Miller, the Symbionese Liberation Army, Annie Hamilton, and Lyndon LaRoche. Right? I will tell y'all a bit of information that I came across very accidentally, researching something else. But most people do not know that the wonderful woman Sojourner Truth was the member of a cult. How many people knew that? Anybody knew that? Oh, thank you, Tanya. Tanya got her stickers in her journal. Yay! Take a picture and post them and tag me in it, Tanya. So anyway, did you know that Sojourner Truth was in a cult? Exactly. I didn't either. So I am, last year, I was thanks, baby. I was doing some research about powerful Black female liberators, and I was reading about the life of Sojourner Truth because she was going to be one of the ones that I featured in this lecture I was going to do. And it said that when she first began her tour on the speaking circuit, she was the devout member of this cult. I forget the dude's name. I didn't write it down for this, but I just thought about this as I was telling y'all. Anyway, so she's following this band of people across country because, you know, the cult that she was a part of was like they were travelers. So the cult that she was a part of, after some time, she eventually left, right? The cult that Sojourner Truth was a part of in the late 1800s would eventually become the Seventh-day Adventist. Yep. They were considered a known cult. And it wasn't until like, I think it was like a change in the leadership or something that they became the Seventh-day Adventist. Yep. Anyway, so that's a nice little tidbit of information. But so what I did was when I was taking notes, and like I said, I intend to, for future reference, I know. I know, Mon Amy, I was the same way. So anyway, I intend to really expound on this question of modern cults, this culture that gives rise to cults. Cults typically most cults typically start out as a rebellious expression against something happening in society. When you look at the periods of human history where you had these swells of cults starting, and then the swell ebbs, and then these swells, and then it ebbs, just like any other social movement, they are typically in response to something occurring in society that creates this powder keg or this pressure within the group, within the society, and the cult becomes the antithesis to whatever this thing is happening in society that is causing this collective frustration. Because the cult isn't the only issue. It is the fact that the general population is experiencing the same thing that gave rise to the cult in the first place. And so that's why it becomes so easy for, quote, otherwise logical, reasonable, tax paying, mortgage paying, child rearing humans to succumb to the narrative of cults. These two things happen simultaneously in a time and in a period in society where the pressure of whatever is happening politically is being internalized in the bodies of the general population. It's not that everybody is crazy. You understand? Because there's a way, even in all of these documentaries. In all of these documentaries, there's this way that human beings are reduced to like simpletons or crazy people, because how could anybody fall for being in a cult? That's not what is happening. That's not what's happening. In the absence of a solution that is tangible and makes sense, that everybody can get on board with, to whatever they are experiencing in their bodies, in their spirits, in their consciousness collectively, the cult becomes the only answer in a sea of what otherwise we're experiencing is madness, you see. So that was one frustration that I had, is in almost all of these documentaries, they talk about the, quote, victims of these cults as if they were, quote, childlike simpletons who were just vulnerable and easily exploitable. You understand? And that's not the case, right? Often that's not the case. When you look at, we'll start with the most notorious. When you look at the cult created by Jim Jones, Jim Jones was Jim Jones. I want to tell y'all a story. I don't have the references. I read this many years ago, 20, 25 years ago, but I will never forget it. I do not know how true it is because it has been difficult for me to find anything online to corroborate what I read in this book. This is a digression, by the way. This is me digressing. Okay. I read in this book because I used to be obsessed. Also, I have kind of weird obsessions. I used to be obsessed with serial killers. I had so many books on serial killers, trying to understand the mind of what makes people do horrible things. You understand? That kind of shit. I was obsessed. Not in like, you know, a stereotypical, like see on TV, hey Amaya, see on TV white girl who writes Ted Bundy love letters type of shit. That's not the kind of obsession I'm talking about. I am really fascinated by the minds of human beings who get to a point where they can do terrible things to other humans, right? So, plus I majored in psychology, like most people who don't know what the hell they want to do when they grow up major in. So for about a year, I majored in psychology. I became fascinated with serial killers. And I read this story in this book. I don't remember the name of the book. Like I said, it's like 25 years ago. I read this book, and it was like all these conspiracy theories about different serial killers, right? And why so many of them were never caught, and why it was so easy, what was happening in society at the time that gave rise to the swell of serial killers in the 60s and the 70s, right? Well, from the about the late 50s through the mid 70s, when you saw this kind of like explosion of serial killers. And two stories that I read that were conspiracies about these serial killers and mass murderers is that one theory about Jim Jones, which I don't have a problem believing because I know the state. This theory was that Jim Jones was a CIA operative, that he had been solicited by the CIA to create this cult as a way to identify would-be radicals. And so when they talk about how him leading the People's Temple when he finally made his way to California, to Northern California, he was running his temple on a platform of what? Socialism. As a matter of fact, what did they call it? He coined the term apostolistic. Apostolistic, is that what it's called? Apostolistic socialism. That's what he called his style of preaching. So when you look at, and even when we hear about what happens in Guyana, you know, it's so old for some of us. Yeah, apostolic socialism is what he called it, right? When we look at the People's Temple and when we look at the move that they made to Guyana, we look at what we know now was a mass murder. It wasn't a mass suicide. It was a mass murder of these people in Guyana, and why it took the United States government so long to even retrieve the bodies. The country of Guyana had to stage a whole campaign because the government wasn't trying to come and retrieve these 900 plus bodies left in the jungle of Guyana. The majority of them were Black. 90% of the people in the People's Temple that had gone to Guyana were Black. That's why. These were people, these were elders, these were regular everyday Black people who had just been exhausted on COINTELPRO and watching every goddamn day their political leaders being murdered in broad daylight on primetime television. Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, the list goes on and on. The Watts rebellions, they were completely exhausted on the state's assault on Black people. And so here you have a preacher that is tending to the spiritual needs, unlike socialism, unlike the Black Panther Party, unlike all of these socialist-led revolutionary movements that had accepted that spirituality had no place in a revolutionary movement. Here, this man was speaking the language of the oppressed, both spiritually, socially, and politically. When we read in The Great Cosmic Mother, Rediscovering the Religion of the Earth, in chapter 2, when she, which is in chapter 2, which is Marx and the Matriarchy, and she talks about, hold on, here it is, right here on page 14 for people who have your book, you feel me, and want to follow along. What does she say? She said, the Marxist narrowing of focus and its consequent denial of human spiritual experience has had tragic repercussions throughout the world. How did this happen? Karl Marx and Engels as well was a deeply passionate man. His quote, opium of the people statement, which is never fairly quoted correctly, is evidence that he was a compassionate man. The quote is this: religious distress is at the same time the expression of real distress. What are we talking about? What is it that gives rise to people succumbing to the narrative of cults? Religious distress is at the same time the expression of real distress. Social distress, political distress, economic distress, spiritual, emotional, mental distress, you see. Religious distress is at the same time the expression of real distress and the protest against real distress. Do you understand? Religion is the sigh of the oppressed creature. Religion is the sigh of the oppressed creature, the heart of the heartless world, just as it is the spirit of a spiritless situation. It is the opium to the people. The demand to give up the illusions about its condition is the demand to give up the condition that needs an illusion in the first place. Criticism has plucked the imaginary flowers from the chain, not so that men will wear the chain without any fantasy or consolation, but so that they will break the chain and cull the living flower. No one has said it better or more clearly recognized the human being's absolute right to cling to spirit in a spiritless situation and to heart in a heartless world, because spirit and heart are real, and they alone have helped millions of human beings survive in otherwise unsurvivable situations. This is what is constantly misquoted in socialist organizations, revolutionary organizations. Religion is the opium of the masses, and so fuck religion, fuck spirit, fuck spirituality. And you wonder why you meet revolutionaries who are exhausted, wiped out, completely dead behind the eyes, tolling the bell, as Mao Zedong called it, right? It is because they have been asked to ignore what speaks to them from inside all the time. So here Jim Jones comes with his flashy ass self and his slick ass tongue and his narcissistic tendencies and his white goddamn privilege. It played a role. Here he is going across country in the Bible Belt South, calling on Black people. Black people, we still have a bad habit. We got a bad habit, baby, of being flattered by the presence of white people. Flattered by the acknowledgement given to us by white people. We do that. And so here this slick talking, relatively good looking white boy is traveling across country, and they talk about it in this documentary, how he was masterful at code switching. He knew exactly what to say to the audience before him. So if it was good, conservative, white Christians, or whether it was good, Southern Black Baptists, he knew exactly what to say based on their lived conditions and experiences to win them. He did that, and he used code switching to do that. And then when he gets to progressive San Francisco in the middle of the 60s, he begins to take the ideology of, conservative Christian morals of middle America and slowly introduce the utopia promised by socialist and communist ideology. That's why he attracted so many Black people, in particular, people who had been exhausted on outright warfare by the state against them. And here this white guy comes along and proposes that, listen, the state ain't never gonna do you right if you Black in America. The state ain't never gonna give you justice. The state ain't never gonna do right by you. We're gonna have to go and create our own institution, our own government, our own utopia in the jungles of one of the blackest countries in the Southern Hemisphere. And they sold their homes, gave up their pension, cashed out their pensions, and followed him wholeheartedly. Meanwhile, his congregation is predominantly Black, predominantly oppressed peoples. His entire crew, his sidekicks of crews, from what I'm told in the documentary, were all white. All the people in positions of leadership were all white. Jim Jones, I did not know it. Jim Jones held office when he got to San Francisco. He was well liked and well loved by many high-ranking politicians. Was monumental, they say, in the election of one of San Francisco's mayors. I don't remember the dude's name. But once he got this guy elected as mayor through a popularity campaign, he was then given a seat over the Department of Housing in San Francisco. You understand? And so that's why it took so long for the government. And the government didn't even intervene. The government was there all after the fact and was reluctant to clean up, retrieve the bodies of 900 plus people who had been murdered, forced to drink cyanide at gunpoint. That was Jim Jones. Now, the conspiracy theory was that his ass was a CIA operative specializing in radical Black nationalist organizations. That was what his specialty was. That's what I read in this book about the conspiracy theories of serial killers and mass murders. Another conspiracy theory I heard was in the 60s, this rise in serial killers corresponded with the rise of serial killers that started happening around the 50s and started peaking in the 60s was directly correlated to this conspiracy that the Roman Catholic Church, in partnership with the United States government, had rescued through asylum hundreds of soldiers, of SS soldiers, the soldiers that were in the Nazi military, SS soldiers, and to avoid the Nuremberg trials, right? So in order for them to escape judgment, escape the Nuremberg trials, the Roman Catholic Church and the United States government funded and relocated and gave new identities to many high-ranking, hundreds of high-ranking officers, scientists, several scientists. This is not even conspiracy. Several scientists went on to work for NASA, so on and so forth. Now, one of the most infamous mass murderers of South America at that time, when he was captured, they say that he was one of these Nazi soldiers that had been living in Argentina. He was directly accredited with the murder of more than 2,000 indigenous children in South America. 2,000. That's what he claimed. That's what he claimed when they caught him. Was that it was at least 2,000 kids that he had killed over his period of time, 2 decades or so, living in Argentina, and that he was a former SS soldier. And the conspiracy theory is that a lot of these uncaptured serial killers from that period were more than likely SS soldiers who were conditioned to bloodlust, and that bloodlust doesn't go away because you have a new identity. So that was a conspiracy theory. I'd love to find this book. I don't even remember the name of the book. I was a kid. I was like 19 or 20 when I read the book. But that always stuck with me. So every time I hear anything about Jim Jones, I was like, that motherfucker worked for the state. He did exactly what the state hired him to do, was to neutralize potential radicals in the Black community. That's my position, and I'm sticking with it. Okay, so I will go on to talk about some of these other things. I'm not trying to teach you about cult leaders. That's not what I'm trying to do. When I took these notes about these different cult leaders, Marshall Applewhite, Yame Gomez, Sun Myung Moon, Shoko Asahara, so on and so on and so on. What was interesting to me and what I wanted to talk to you all about is the similarities. The similarities, the defining attributes of cults. The greetings, Inyasha Maleko says she's new here. Welcome. I am Cassandra, Faye Floyd, also known as the daughter of the Fates. Everybody say hey to Inyasha. Okay, so one of the things we've mentioned, which I want to reiterate, is that whenever you see in the history, particularly of the United States of America, when you see a groundswell of the emergence of cults at any particular period, look at what is happening politically, historically, astrologically, socially in society that may have given rise to this antithetical response to what is happening in society, because the two are directly related. And somebody mentioned it earlier. Tanya mentioned that Christianity started as a cult. Christianity didn't start as a cult. Christianity remains a cult. Christianity meets all of the defining factors that quantify an organization as a cult. Christianity meets that. Islam meets that. Judaism meets that. They are all cults. Okay? And so that's another thing. What is it? Is it just a political response? Is it just a social response to something happening in the greater scheme of things? No, we've been conditioned. Okay, so let me not to get too far off course. I don't want to go there yet. Okay. Okay. So one of the things in this documentary, How to Become a Cult Leader, that was fascinating. All of the cult leaders that they highlight have similar origins, which is why I mentioned the Christianity thing. All of them have similar origins. Okay. All but one have their origins in Christianity. Not just, okay, I used to go to church every Sunday. All of them have their origins in devout, what we would call hardcore Christianity. Jim Jones, I think his father was a Pentecostal preacher. Marshall Applewhite, all of them had their origins in very strict religious or Christian organizations. Excuse me. Every single one. Another thing that they all, and the only one that did not was the Japanese cult leader, um, Ashihara. What's his name? Shoko Ashihara. But he was still raised in a devout Buddhist. Okay. The other thing that I found interesting among almost all of them, where they all had early lives, teenage years, early years of college, where they were involved in some way in the arts, primarily like theater and music, theater, song, dance, all of them. All of them, every single one, had early lives involved in those particular areas of the arts. Music, theater was huge, and dance. I found that fascinating. And then, the stereotypical, what do you call it? Characteristics of one who would become, absolutely, yes, the Jehovah's Witnesses is a cult. Absolutely, 1,000%. Anyway, what was I saying? Shit. I told y'all I can't be reading the comments out loud or I'll forget what I'm talking about. Hold on. Damn. Oh, so some of the stereotypical characteristics of those that would become cult leaders, and this is a whole nother workshop I'm going to do, is narcissism, malignant narcissism, delusions of grandeur, right? Delusions of grandeur, masterful gaslighters, right? This too was something that they all had in common. Now, another thing that they had in common, several of them, not all of them, which I also found fascinating. Several of them had unfortunate childhoods. Like several of them were the victims of bullying. Right? I found that fascinating. Shoko Asahara was born blind, right? And so he started out, very timid and self-conscious and even bullied. And then, they talk about what transformed him, what changed his life, and how charismatic he was, and this, that, and the other, right? So I found that interesting. All of these defining kind of characteristics. Now I'm gonna just say this before I go into this next area. There are several female-led cults. There are several females who were leaders in these cults. But by and large, 99.9% of cults of the last 150 years are extremely patriarchal in origin, in character, in function. They center around a self-proclaimed deity-like individual who has insidious ulterior motives, typically. And I'll be honest, I am really careful about the use or the identification of people like this as crazy, because what it does is it reduces the significance of the fact that most of them are deliberately calculating and and insidious. And to just reduce them to crazy is to presume that if they were sane, they would not have behaved as they did. I really am careful about categorizing people who do harm to others as crazy. I really am. Because I feel like that's a discussion for another day too. I just feel like so much of what we understand as modern psychology evolved as a way to try to understand and justify the behaviors of patriarchal humans, primarily in Europe, where the science developed. Was white people trying to understand why white people do to white people what they do. This was a response to the reign of holy terror by the Catholic Church and all of its lackeys and the nobility, waging utter hell on regular everyday white people for some 900 years. So when the school of rationalism emerged, trying to discount the existence of the devil and witches and shit, because that's how the school of rationale emerged, or the school of reason emerged, was in direct response to the Inquisition. And out of the school of reason, or the thought of reason, came the science of psychology. But the science of psychology was still doing to women the same thing that the Catholic Church was doing, but just under the guise of trying to understand women's brains and what makes them, quote, witches and what makes them crazy or whatever, by putting them in sanitariums and performing freaking lobotomies on them because they were, quote, sex crazed or what have you, or they were not docile like women should be. So two sides of the very same wicked ass coin, if you have me tell it. So I'm very cautious. I'm very careful not to reduce everything to crazy, because some shit is willful, diabolical, insidious shit. And if you can accept that some shit is just evil, diabolical, insidious, purposeful shit for the maintenance of power under the banner of patriarchy, then you can come to a better conclusion about how to rectify it, how to judge it, and how to punish it. Crazy confuses shit sometimes, and we cast those words out too eagerly. None of these dudes. I am hesitating for a reason, because narcissism has been categorized, right, as a treatable mental illness. Not necessarily curable, but treatable. Right? Problem is, what is the seed of narcissism? What is the origin of narcissism? How does a child develop the information that would eventually lead to that child becoming a narcissist? What is it socially or culturally that transforms an innocent child into a narcissistic lunatic? Right? I don't think we ask that question enough, because we're talking about cults. But Christianity is the biggest cult on earth. Christianity has produced in all of us the blueprint for how to become a narcissist and how to accept narcissistic abuse. At the same time, if you're a male, Christianity teaches you how to become a narcissist. If you're a female, Christianity teaches you how to accept narcissistic abuse. Think I'm lying? Christianity teaches you that gaslighting is acceptable behavior. Think I'm lying? Here you have a story about a God who is so repulsed by the flesh of his own creation. Women. About a God who is repulsed by the flesh of his own creation. So repulsed that he has said that by sheer virtue of being born from this filthy, fleshy, diabolical creature that I created, you understand? You will be born in sin. You will be sinful by birth because your mama is sinful by birth. Her flesh is sinful. The betrayer of men, her flesh is. But I created her, but she is evil. You understand? And being born of her guarantees you a seat in hell until you are reborn in me, from my blood, baptized in my water. And for the gift of being reborn from your filthy fucking mama, you understand? The gift that I give is your spiritual rebirth and baptism in my blood and water. Because my blood and water are sacred. Your mama's blood and water is filthy, repugnant, disgusting, treachery. Therefore, you need be reborn in my blood and my water. You have never known me, have no evidence of me and my existence. Do you understand? You are not of my own bloodline. You are not even the descendants of my line. And up until 2,000 years ago, you weren't even entitled to salvation. You understand? You don't know me. Ain't never met me. You understand? Can't hear me. Just have to blindly trust, you see. And it doesn't matter that you've never met me, don't know me, ain't from my bloodline. If you refuse me, you will burn forever and ever and ever in a lake of fire of my own creation. But know that I love you because I gave my life for you. That is the goddamn ultimate gaslight. Of all the gaslights on the planet Earth, that is the ultimate goddamn gaslight. I love you, therefore I gave my life for you. But if you don't do what the fuck I say, you're going to burn in eternity for hell with demons eating at your entrails. But I love you. You my child. You understand? Narcissistic abuse is bred in us. The use of or the acceptance of gaslighting is something that we are socially, collectively primed to do and accept. You understand? That's why it's so easy for people to submit to cults. Cults, though they may be fringe or we think they're kind of weird because they dress alike or they whatever, you know what I'm saying? I don't know, like whatever the cult is. There are some things that are pretty basic. The doing away with uniqueness. I don't say individuality. The eradication of uniqueness. So we all have to dress alike because there's no way. Listen, there's no way for me or us to accept each other fully and wholeheartedly in our sovereignty if we can't get past their outward appearances or what makes them different from us. We get caught up in what makes them different from us. So we all have to dress alike. So it's not a distraction. I have believed this at times. Like, people, because the science tells us we make up our mind, but this is a part of our conditioning. We make up our mind about what we think about a human being within the first 2.5 seconds that we come into their presence. They don't even have to open their mouth. In the first 2.5 seconds that we meet a person, we've already formed an opinion about who they are. And based on that opinion about who they are, their value or their valuelessness. We've already done that in the first 2.5 seconds. They've got it down to such a science that they can predict presidential election outcomes based on showing a picture of candidates to a group of people. That is our conditioning. That's not because we're afflicted as humans. It's because our conditioning teaches us to accept hierarchies. Our conditioning teaches us to feel better about ourselves based on weaknesses that we can extract out of others, that we can point out in others. So the whole idea that happens within cults about everybody dressing alike because it eradicates the distraction of judging people or not being able to see oneness in humans. Well, ideologically, it might sound okay. What it is used to do is to deny your individual uniqueness that is necessary in the grand scheme of things. We are unique for a reason. We are still one. We are unique in our relationship to others around us. So the conditioning, the undoing of the conditioning has to be us rejecting our knee-jerk response to see a human being and say, I don't like fat bitches. I already know she got to be lazy. I mean, because there ain't no reason she can't lose weight. Oh my God, look at her hair. Why she leave the house looking like that? Don't she know she make all of us look bad? You feel me? Whatever the judgment is. Whatever the judgment is, right? And so that's one of the that's one of the markers. The other thing that does is making everybody dress alike or having a uniform or whatever is it allows for the maintenance of the hierarchy. It allows for the only one to be entitled to uniqueness in the space is the leader of the cult, right? That something is distinct about him or her. Something is special about him or her that we all must aspire to become. That we are not tapped in to spirit in the same way that they are. You see, we are not plugged in the way that they are. That's why we have to endure trials and tribulations and abuses to be able to get to where they are. And we can't do that if we're still stuck, quote, in the world. We can't do that if we're stuck in the world. If we're concerned about things in the world, if we're concerned about owning a house or having a car or having nice things or raising a family, we can't possibly acquire enlightenment. We can't possibly arrive if we care about ourselves. How is that any different than what Christianity teaches you? Child, I wish I would have thought to pull out my motherfucking Bible. I can point out scripture after scripture after scripture where the Bible demands of you to hate your mother and father in service of the Lord. But I didn't make that up. That's in the scripture. That's in the word. That a male child must leave his mother. But the leaving is with this kind of disdain. It teaches separation from the mother. It teaches abandonment of the mother. The scripture does that. The scripture tells us, be not concerned with the things of this earth. That's why it's so easy for Christians to have no problem exploiting, raping, pillaging the planet. And don't see it as any indication of some kind of spiritual depravity. They don't see that as wrong, right? What else that is common? Because see, to abandon the earth is to abandon the mother, right? To abandon the earth is to abandon the mother. So that's why the scripture is so heavy in its multiplicity of verses that talk about this disdain for the planet, this disdain for the earth, leaving the mother, all these symbolisms that are hostile towards the image of the mother, right? Okay, so that's another thing. The other thing that I found interesting, because we've talked about this as the committee of the Temple of Evolutionary Emergence, we talked about this a lot, and I waver about it. I go back and forth about it. Is the whole idea of communal living, communes. This is a defining factor. My sister is a Christian missionary. She lives in the Dominican Republic, did the majority of her mission work in Haiti, and they recently moved to the Dominican Republic, right? And I remember growing up in church, in the church that my sister is still tied to, my sister is still a part of. And the narrative in especially extremely strict Christian religious organizations is, staying away from the secular world, not reading secular books. If it's not written by a Christian or a preacher, you can't read it. If it's not music sang by a Christian or approved by the church, you can't listen to it. We have to stay out of the secular world. We cannot have relationships with family members who do not believe in the word. What's the other one? So many of these institutions have their own schools because they do not want their kids being exposed to, quote, secular science. I ain't lying. I'm not lying. You feel me? So that's Christianity, and we accept that as perfectly normal behavior, right? But flip the coin to, quote, cults. They behave exactly the same way. You have to abandon your family. You cannot have contact with any of your family members once you join the organization. They won't understand, blah, 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 blah. They do the same thing. Can't read anything that is not directly tied to the dogma of this particular organization. Cannot participate in worldly activities anymore. Most will require that you do bouts, if not permanent celibacy, while the leader does not practice the same way. It's the same thing. What's another one? Somebody else mentions harming children, like with AKA circumcision, no celebration. Okay. So those are more detailed things. I'm talking about like overall similarities between Christianity or all Abrahamic religions, because I say all Abrahamic religions, right? And quote, the rise in cults. Cults are an exact opposite extreme of Christianity. Most people would say Satanism is. Satanism is a patriarchal response to the constraints imposed on human beings by Christianity. To me, it's not the opposite extreme. Satanism is not. It is, in my estimation, a comical response to the aggressions and the restrictions of the Christian church, right? And it too emerged at a period in history where people were sick of Christianity. People were sick and tired of the restrictions and the dogma and the oppression of Christianity, right? In the 60s is when the first satanic church emerged. And it was directly in response to the record burnings and, rock and roll is the devil's music and all of that shit. So, yeah, and Yasha, yeah, you can't be having no friendships or relationships with non-believers because they got wicked spirits on them, and them spirits will jump on you and make you backslide or whatever. So these are some of the similarities. But what we don't talk about is the fact that all of these institutions are meeting a need. They're meeting a need That need is a spiritual need. It's an emotional need. It's a collective need, like the need for community. Oh, I wanted to say before I got too far off that the whole communal living thing. I'm like, everybody that starts a cult wants to go and live off grid and live in these communities or whatever. And I understand why. We've talked about it as the Temple of Evolutionary Emergence. I am also not opposed to one of the things that we've talked about is the need for the acquisition of land, even if it's like little plots here and there, an acre here, 5 acres there, whatever, to acquire land. I am not opposed to the idea necessarily of communal living. What I am opposed to is the idea that you cannot get what you need socially, communally, spiritually, and emotionally and still have a practical life. Do you understand what I'm saying? I envision and have for a long time how to make spirituality something that is not elusive and weird and outlandish and cliquish. How can the everyday working class person and how can the regular everyday middle class suit and tie guy wearing person who has to go work at an office have and attain a spiritual life, a spiritual relationship to the mother without having to wear tie-dye and flowers in their fucking hair and walk barefoot in the fields of fucking Minnesota somewhere? Like, there's got to be a place in between where people who live regular, everyday, practical lives can still experience the epiphany of a relationship with the mother. They can still experience radical ecstasy in spiritual ceremony with like-minded human beings that they just happen to only see on the weekends without having to live in a commune off-grid somewhere if they choose not to. That the only way that you are going to experience spiritual epiphany is off-grid somewhere in the bush in a commune. Yeah, so like we have to think about that. We have to think about it because I'm not interested in exploitation in any way, shape, form, or fashion. I'm not interested in it. And to me, that's what cults are. They are even if they start out with good intentions, because my position is and remains that men cannot lead if they are led particularly by men, but even if they are led by patriarchal women, the only thing that can come as a consequence is the exploitation of human beings. A plus B equals C 150% of the time. Patriarchy cannot lead. Patriarchy cannot lead because all it can do is produce exploitation. That is all. There is not a problem on the face of the goddamn planet that has been resolved by patriarchy, by a patriarch, by a patriarchal woman in a position of power. There's not a single goddamn problem on earth that's been solved by patriarchy. Not one. But I can guarantee you every problem that exists on the planet right now has its seed in patriarchy. That I can promise you. That I can promise you. So, listen, the main reason that I'm trying to have this conversation with you guys today is because I have to be able to, those that are committed to building the temple have to be able to articulate when somebody come at you with that dumb shit about how you a cult. Like, no, we're not a cult. We believe wholeheartedly in the necessity of the expression of the uniqueness of every individual that resides within the mother's body, baby. We believe that. Do you understand? Yes, Helen, I did. Yes, I did. She's talking about the no more male gurus, priests, preachers, etc. live that I did not long ago when the Dalai Lama told that baby to suck his tongue. Every time I think about that, I get an attitude. But you know what? Let me just thank you so much for mentioning him. Because he's an example. Here the Dalai Lama done got a pass for a long time. He done been the Dalai Lama a long time. This Dalai Lama right now. He done been the Dalai Lama for a long time. He perpetually get passes. Everybody's outraged for a half a second because he tells a baby, a 7-year-old kid, to suck his tongue. And you got all these people defending him. And come to find out there was an expose about how many children are taken from their villages to become monks in Tibet and suffer the same sexual abuse that children in the Vatican do, that children in Roman Catholic Church do. Why y'all act surprised? Why y'all surprised by shit like this? Men cannot lead. Men cannot lead. Ever. Ever. They can lead under the leadership of the mother. They can lead if they are taking direction from a council of elder women. That's when they can lead some shit. That's it. All you do is facilitating the goddamn will of the mother. That's all. That's it. I just told y'all the story yesterday. What did I tell y'all yesterday? I gave y'all an analogy yesterday about the executioner. Remember, I talked about the executioner. You understand? As far as the Catholic Church was concerned, the executioner was not a murderer. He would put on his black hood for a reason, so that the people could not judge him. Because the church had already said he is ordained by God to murder women at the behest of the Catholic Church and the Inquisition. You understand? He is ordained by God to murder women because the father of the church said so. Well, we find this bitch guilty and you gonna cleave her head off, or you gonna cut her down the middle and pull her entrails out, or you gonna drown her with bricks around her ankles, or you gonna behead her, or whatever it is you gonna do. But you good. You still gonna go to heaven. You see? You still gonna go to heaven because you are carrying out the will of the Holy Inquisition. Why do we see that the world has not changed? The world hasn't changed. Men do not see themselves as criminals. Men see themselves as obedient servants of the Father God. Yeah, they do. No matter what cult they lead, this God's work they doing. Because the God that they serve is a patriarchal, militant, malignant, megalomaniacal goddamn war god who is drunk off the blood of the innocent. You understand? Tanya, you're gonna have to catch up, girl. There's like 1,000 videos of the Dalai Lama live telling this baby to suck his tongue. You understand? And these people were trying to say, oh, it's a culture. It's part of our culture in Tibet to stick your tongue out. Yeah, okay, stick your tongue out. Ain't nobody said nothing about sucking nobody's tongue. Telling no child in front of a group of people who are laughing and shit to suck your tongue and pull the baby head towards you. Oh, it's gross. It's gross. That's what I'm saying. Like, look, yes, I am a matriarch. I believe in the reemergence of the matriarchy. There's something else I want to tell you before we get too far off. But there are a lot of women out here who are just as guilty as men. Some more guilty than men. So do not get what I say twisted. I do not make blanket statements about women. When I'm talking about women, I am talking about us. I'm talking about those of us enlightened, doing the work of the mother, living a life of integrity, living a life conscious that every moment we're shaping the future. Not talking about malignant, freaking patriarchal damsels in distress or none of that craziness. No upholders of patriarchy, no perpetrators of crimes against children, none of that. Y'all are not included in the conversation that I'm having about women and the reemergence of the matriarch. Because you had me telling once the matriarchy reemerges, there are going to be just as many women getting the blade as there are men. That's another story for another day. Okay, so those were some similarities. The communal living, the the erasure of your own unique identity, and then what you call it, like ritual practice. Um, so one thing that I have struggled with, and I've mentioned this to you guys, I y'all gonna have an attitude about this. I'm gonna tell you, but it's something I regularly struggle with. I appreciate and understand why ritual and ceremony are important. I do. I appreciate the way with which people practice ritual and ceremony. I do. However, I struggle now, even now. I struggle with the monotone, monotonous, repetitious bleeding of the mouth that people call prayer and ceremony. I I I have to feel it in my body. I have to believe it in my spirit, or I am just turned off. The ritualistic, like I received these prayer beads. These aren't them, but these are a type of prayer beads. This is an ayahuasca necklace that was given to me, right? So we'll call these my prayer beads. I have some Tibetan prayer beads that I got at this event a few years ago to go see the hugging prophet. I don't know if y'all know her. Her name is Amma, Amma, and her nickname is the hugging prophet, right? So my homeboy calls me. He's like, "Oh my God, the hugging prophet is in LA. You gotta see her. You gotta see her." And I used to be in a revolutionary organization with, but he was raised Hindu. He's African. He's black. He was raised Hindu, raised in the Hindu tradition. He's like, "You got to go see Amma. You got to go see Amma." So I was like, "Okay, I don't know who she is, but I trust Satish. I'm gonna go see Amma." And there were 3,000 people waiting in that auditorium to get a hug from the hugging prophet. Okay. It was beautiful. The whole experience. They had a full live Indian band, sitars and tablas and flute players and singers. And oh my God, that in and of it was like 30 people in this band. It was amazing. It was like sensory overload, right? Everybody is hugging each other and loving each other and meeting each other. It was really a dope experience. I had a really incredible experience with Amma. I was given my prayer beads. I'll use these as an example. And the thing that you have to do with the prayer beads as a meditation is she would give you, if you requested a personal mantra. After you got your hug, you would talk to a counselor, and then you would go back and you would she would whisper to you your personal mantra. Somebody would listen in, and she would listen in, or the person would listen in and then write down, translate your personal mantra so that you could you write down your personal mantra so you could repeat your personal mantra. Then as a meditation, you would take each bead, just like the Holy Rosary or just like, Buddhist prayer beads or whatever, and you would say your mantra with each bead. Say the mantra, 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 all the way around your prayer beads. You feel me? And I did it for a little while because this is a new culture. This is this new experience. The personal mantra I still have. And so I did it for a little while. You feel me? But there's a reason that I hated praying when I was a kid. I thought after I became a revolutionary that the reason I hated praying was because my spirit was rebelling against Christianity. But when I became a devotee of Ifa, I hated praying. I hated being prostrate. I hated it. And I was like, what is wrong with me? Like, what is wrong with me? Why do I hate praying? It wasn't that I hate praying. I hate prostration. I hate monotony. I hate repetitious reciting of shit as if that is supposed to fill your spirit. You feel me? Some people may get it that way. It's not to condemn people who can get it that way, who can get there that way. But what happens is, as we've been so hogtied to what's called the path of the right, or the right hand path, that we think that there's no other way to seek the face of God. And so I would be like, the way that people would feel, or I think they would feel, laying face down on their freaking belly or on their hands and knees with their hands clasped, their eyes closed tight, they weeping and wailing. I was like, I don't get it. I don't feel nothing. I don't get it. I don't hear shit. You feel me? Child, it is because, man, according to Buddhist and Hindu tradition, the path, the left-hand path, the path of the left hand is just, it provides the same access to spiritual enlightenment and epiphany. So where the right hand path is about abstinence, is about restriction, it's about supplication and all of that shit. The left hand path is about radical acceptance. It is about indulgence, radical indulgence. It is about being fully in your flesh and being able to still seek the face of God and reach epiphany, spiritual epiphany. Why is that important? Because in this great book, The Great Cosmic Mother, when she talks about the flesh, the spirit is embodied. The spirit lives within in the flesh, and whatever impacts and affects the flesh impacts and affects the development of the spirit. I ain't gonna look for it, but so the reason I mention this is because y'all know this. I get on here and I start talking to y'all, right? You can tell. I know you can. You can tell when spirit intervenes through me, because I can feel it when it shifts in me. You can feel it. You can tell when something happens when I'm talking to you and an intervention occurs. I mean, sometimes I do ceremony. Sometimes I do ritual. I will light some incense or a candle behind here, set the tone, purify the space. But when I talk about the practical application of spiritual work, I'm not talking about ritualistic monotony that is completely devoid of spirit. Because sometimes it's just the shit we do to convince others. I'm serious. Because I'm convinced that what the shrine does, this is one of my altars behind me. My ancestral shrine is here against the wall, right? My ancestor staff is on the other side, right? My warriors are behind my front door. My Ogun, Oshosi, and Eshu, Elegba is behind my door. And I do make offerings to them. I do acknowledge them. I do throw my little pennies out the window when I'm about to go on a journey on the road. But these things are outward expressions, outward reminders of what exists completely within you. So I don't get caught up so much in the dogmatic ritualistic displays of spirituality. But I am concerned sometimes because they serve a purpose for now. They serve a purpose. I know that my ancestral shrine, my ancestral altar especially when I was young in the tradition, served a very real purpose for me. It opened up a portal for me to be able to communicate something and wake something up within myself. I still make offerings to my ancestral shrine, but I am completely aware that I do not need to. And that's going to be a problem for some of y'all. Because the ritual becomes everything. But the ritual can occur within your own flesh if we see ourselves intimately connected to our ancestors, to our emissaries, to our angels, to our ancestral spirits, or whatever it is you subscribe to. That they are all embodied. They are all embodied. We say they're around us, they're over here, they're over there. They are all. This is them. We are them. You see, I am talking about this because as we go along, as we go further in the process, I'm talking about organizing this retreat in December. I just told y'all about last night. And it is an area of concern for me because I know people need the pomp and circumstance. I recognize that. In order for it to feel real to them, they need the ritual. I do understand it. So while I'm trying to organize, develop a retreat, am having to say, okay, I have to create ceremony. I have to create ceremony. I have to create a ritual because that's what people need to accept that what I have to offer is valid. And that's unfortunate. It's unfortunate. It's unfortunate, but it's something that I'm aware of. So I will try to be I'll try to be more disciplined in my application of ritual before these services. Some things that once I have a building, once I have an actual location where we can do in-person services here in LA. Like we had service on that mountain the other night during that full moon. That was powerful. Baby, when I tell you I felt spirit move through that fucking space and shoot everybody standing around squarely in the chest, that shit was real. That shit was real. Or to me, that's what church is. That's what ceremony is. Is being around a bunch of strangers and know the exact moment they all tapped in. That shit was amazing. That shit was amazing. You understand? So, that being said, very soon the temple is going to have a location where people in the greater Los Angeles area can come and, fellowship in person. And I'll still be broadcasting these online. However, it's something that, yeah, I know I'm going to have to do. But I'm wary because these conversations that I'm having to you about cults and about being able to articulate what is different about the Temple of Evolutionary Emergence than any other, quote, cult that has emerged in the last 150 years. What is it that sets you guys apart? Well, one, you'll never be able to identify, as far as I'm concerned. You'll never be able to identify who's in the temple or not. You'll never be able to walk down the street like the Church of Latter-day Saints or the fucking Scientologist or the fucking whoever, these Orthodox Jews that live in the community right down the street. You'll never be able to say, oh, there they are. That's the Temple of Evolutionary Emergence. That's them weirdos right there. See, you see how she dressed? They in the Temple of Evolutionary Emergence. They with that bullshit. Feel me? That ain't no shit I'm interested in. I'm not interested in automatons. I'm not interested in any of that. I'm not interested in any of that. As a matter of fact, what I'm interested in is what makes every single person unique. What is it that stands out about you? That's what I'm interested in. What is it that allows you to distinguish yourself from others? What gift did you incarnate with? How do you want to make use of this gift in the service of the mother? How do you want to sing her praises through the arts, or the science, or the music that you produce? That's what I'm interested in. That's all I'm interested in. What is the temple of evolutionary emergence? It is the uterus. It is the lower palace. It is the vessel, the portal that allows spiritual ambition to become real material reality. It is the fulfillment of a longing by spirit to fulfill a personal destiny. That's what the temple of evolutionary emergence is. We, as spirit transformed to flesh, are the willful participants, the willful, ecstatic, enthusiastic architects of the world that we say we want to live in. That's what the temple of evolutionary emergence is. The ever growing, emerging, the simultaneous dissolution and emergence of the new of us every single goddamn day. That's who the temple of evolutionary emergence is. The simultaneous shedding and reemerging of the one that is us in her. Shh. Y'all ain't rocking with me. I'm trying to tell you. What is it that will set us apart from this madness that has afflicted human being? Every cult, every harm that it's caused to every person involved. What is it that sets us apart? Is this a hierarchy? Yes, I am the founder of Evolutionary Emergence. Is this my shit? Or is this the bringing together of those of us who can hear? I heard. That's her shit. And right now I'm the spokesman. That won't be for forever. I won't be the only one. But this is why we have to have these discussions right now. Y'all have to be able to clearly communicate and articulate the will of the mother with your unique voice. You don't have to reproduce anything I say. As long as you know the mission, as long as you know what the temple is, who the she is that we say is the center of all things, get it how you get it. Live it how you live it, baby. So, anyway, I think I'm going to stop there. I'm tired. And I want wine and ice cream. So, this topic, though, about cults, about emerging cults, about cults of personality, Trump as a cult leader, Biden as a cult leader. You understand? America as a cult. America is a cult. America is a cult. Being able to define the difference between a cult and the creation of a new culture. Understand? This is the work that we have to do. One last thing that I will say. I promise this is the last thing I will say. I talked earlier about Karl Marx. His the opium of the masses statement. When we talk about, because I get this question a lot, I think it's going to be the next paper that I write. Why I'm not a socialist, or why I'm no longer a socialist. And we talk about as socialist, because I used to be, right? Karl Marx, Engels, Morgan, all of these dudes talked about, I think it was Karl Marx's his analysis on the development of human society, right? I think that's what it is. The analysis on the development of human society. And where he starts on this chart of the development of human society is what he calls primitive communalism. Everybody following? Primitive communalism. Okay? That's where it starts. And what, in his mind, primitive communalism is the closest thing that human beings have experienced as an egalitarian society, right? That this is what Morgan observed among the Iroquois. This is what Morgan observed among the Iroquois people, right? And as you go up the scale in what he calls the development of human civilization, you have primitive communalism, feudalism, capitalism, socialism, communism, and then the utopia. And then communism is the utopia that is reached that looks, in his mind, just like primitive communalism, only it's white. He didn't say that, but that's what he meant. Because to talk about primitive communalism is to imply that, quote, primitive people, which is always this production that the white world, the white scientific world makes about others of us, that they couldn't have possibly developed this kind of situation deliberately, right? And so once we achieve it after the ails of the development of human civilization, we have to go through woes. We have to go through the trials and the woes of feudalism and capitalism. Then we have to make the socialist revolution where the state is still in place and still oppressive of the former bourgeoisie. And then after a while, after we've snuffed out the ideas of the former bourgeoisie, communism can just emerge with the withering away of the state. And when white people accomplish what primitive people already had going, then it becomes the utopia that is known as communism. But the thing that they always conveniently left out of that fucked up scenario is the fact that primitive communalism, as they call it, the most precise example of an egalitarian society where oppression did not exist, where classes did not exist, where the state did not exist, occurred under the matriarchy everywhere on the goddamn planet. So-called primitive communalism was a matriarchal society, a political, social, economic, theological, spiritual society of the egalitarian society of women. My homeboy Kamara says, I am a matriarchal communal fundamentalist. I'm with it. I love it. I love it. Yes, I love it. Yes, a matriarchal communal fundamentalist. I like that. I like that. I like that. I gave y'all a whole rundown about Marx and the development of human society because the answer is clear. It's not even confusing. It's not even confusing. Marx was wrong. Marx was wrong. Marx was wrong. Global socialism, as he explained it, will not exist. It can't happen. Global communism, as Marx explained it, as a utopian society of the former workers in arms with the withering away of the state, cannot be on the terms set by patriarchy in place right now. And the face of patriarchy, the face of global patriarchy right now is white and male, but not exclusively white and male, because too many of you colored men fully enthusiastically participate. The development of human society based on Karl Marx's analysis cannot emerge without women on top and in the front leading the goddamn charge. Therefore, it would completely eradicate what he assessed was the scientific analysis of the emergence or the development of human society. He was wrong. And we have to come to the table 120 plus years later and say, okay, Karl Marx was wrong. So what next? So how we going how we going to redefine how humanity is going to develop in the next period? Because that communist shit and that socialist shit didn't work, didn't stage a decent, reasonable campaign against the ills of capitalism. So what the fuck next? So what next? At this juncture, having all the evidence that socialist revolutionary movements have failed, they would make a gain here or there or here or there, but those gains only serve to strengthen capitalism. So at this stage in the game, the dogmatic hog tying to oneself to socialist ideology is nothing short of cultish. Nothing short of cultish. Because what? Cults don't produce no results. Cults don't produce no miracles. When's the last time you heard about a cult performing miracles? When is the last time you heard about a cult enriching and resolving the issues in life of those participants in the cult? Christianity don't do that shit neither. Islam don't do that shit neither. Judaism don't do that shit neither. And Buddhism teaches you need to suffer in order to fucking reach nirvana anyway. So suffering becomes the shit you look forward to. When is the last time you heard? I'm talking about real miracles. I'm talking about the kind of shit that I tell y'all. Evidentiary miracles. Because you've been primed for forever to believe and trust without evidence. Just trust. Have blind faith. Believe in your heart and say with your mouth that I am the Lord. Despite everything, your flesh is steady in a goddamn contest with that bullshit that's in your brain. Your flesh is constantly telling you this shit is making you sick. This dogma you didn't accept it is physically making you sick. Yet you got cancer because your ass is a Christian. Your ass got high blood pressure because your ass is a Christian. Your flesh is at war with this shit in your goddamn head. Everything in your fucking body is telling you this is wrong. This is wrong. Spirit is not out there somewhere. Spirit has not abandoned you. God has not abandoned you. She is in you. She is you. You are her. You are one with the mother. You are one with her, and your separation from her, your isolation from her is what has gotten you sick, is what has made you crazy, is what has turned the world upside down. Communism is not the way forward. Socialism is not the goddamn way forward. Christianity is not the way forward. The Roman Catholic Empire is not the way forward. None of this shit created by men for the sole purpose of confusing the masses to exploit human potential. You understand? You understand? So that's what I'm saying. I'm saying we have to redefine everything on earth. I told y'all a story once about how homeboy of mine went on this barefoot doctoring thing, where you can go out into the woods and identify herbs and plants that are medicinal, herbs and plants that are, poisonous, herbs that are native, herbs that are invasive, whatever. So he goes on this whole barefoot doctoring thing. It's an indigenous brother. He was like, yo, Yapo. He's like, that shit was cool. But he said, I could feel my spirit lament every time this person that was leading us would give us the Latin name for these plants. And he said, finally, he was like, what was these plants called before they was given Latin names? what did my ancestors call these plants before y'all came to fuck over? He said he went off. It was like, what am I want to know the name. I want to know the scientific name my people gave the plants before y'all came to fuck over here, fucking with everything and changing the name on everything. Like, they literally left no stone unturned. Every body part is named after some white guy. Everyone. The beautiful organ that allows me to have an ejaculation orgasm is named after a white boy. I'm a black woman. And my wonderful orgasmic body part is named after a white dude. My muscles, my joints, my bones, my cartilage, cartilage, connective tissue. Like, there literally is no stone left unturned. The world that we lived in has been defined literally by white supremacy. This is the work that we have to do. When I talk about changing language, when I'm talking about redefining everything, I mean everything. I mean everything. I mean every motherfucking thing. Anyway, I hope this was helpful. I hope this was helpful. I want to continue on this. Discussion around cults. You know, maybe we'll talk more about race nationalist cults next time. Maybe like the KKK and Nazis, and these are all cults. These are all cults, right? So anyway, this was fun for me. It's raining now. I'm so happy. So happy. So happy. So I need to go put out some jars or something to catch some of this rain. I hope I didn't, I wasn't, I hope I was relatively concise in what I was trying to communicate about why we are not a cult, what distinguishes the Temple of Evolutionary Emergence from cults that have existed for the last 120 years, right? And how can we forge a future under the banner of the Temple of Evolutionary Emergence in a way that people can, no matter where they come from, no matter what they believe, can fully get on board with the Temple of Evolutionary Emergence. All of y'all got a mama. Every last 8 billion of you got a mama. Came right out of a uterus. You feel me? Like, if for no other reason you can get down with the Temple of Evolutionary Emergence, if for no other reason other than you got a mama, whether you knew her or not, whether she raised you or not, your ass came out of a uterus, invisible, implanted yourself in the uterus, and came out a whole material force with a whole destiny to forge. If for no other reason you can be in the Temple of Evolutionary Emergence. You a member of the Temple of Evolutionary Emergence. You understand? And so that, one, distinguishes us from a cult. You ain't got to do no grand gestures to become a member of the Temple of Evolutionary Emergence. Your ass exists. You exist. And you exist through the portal called your mother's womb, the lower palace. Right? And I'm not going to call on y'all to come live in a commune somewhere with me out in the wilderness. Even if I decide to go live, because I want a yurt. I want to build a glamorous yurt while I build my dream home made out of 85 to 95% recycled materials. You feel me? But y'all don't have to come and live with me. We can still do this. We can still do virtual. We can still do virtual temple. We can have 2 or 3, 4 events every year, an event a quarter. You feel me? To get the fellowship in. I'm not going to have y'all come live with me. I'm not going to have y'all come cater to me. I like living by myself. You understand? I'm not going to have y'all come rub my feet or no bullshit like that. You understand? So, we can go down a whole list of Temple of Evolutionary Emergence versus every motherfucking cult that's ever existed. We can do that. But America is a cult. We have to accept that. You know what I'm saying? Rome is a cult. A political cult, by the way, not a spiritual cult. Rome, the Roman Catholic Church, the Holy Roman Empire, is a political cult. You understand? Anyway, I am speaking this weekend, coming, not this weekend that we're in, the weekend coming at Afro Future Con in San Diego. I'm so hype about it. if you guys have any suggestions of what I should be, they have what do they call it? What are they calling it? It's not a player's ball. It's like a play on words. It's like but they're having a cosplay ball where you can get dressed up in your favorite Afrofuturistic kind of cosplay or whatever. I got to come up with an idea about what I'm going to dress up for this weekend. And then I'm going to have one of my friends broadcasting my presentation live. So keep an eye out for that too. So I'm doing a presentation then for that. I'll keep y'all up on that. And in the meantime, I will see you guys back on Monday for our regularly scheduled 5 p.m. talk with Cassandra Faye Floyd, the daughter of the Fates, founder of the Temple of Evolutionary Emergence, 5 o'clock Monday. I know y'all going to be barbecuing or whatever y'all do on Labor Day, but I'm still going to be here at 5 o'clock. So, and then probably what I'm going to do is read from my second most favorite book, The Women's Encyclopedia of Myths and Secrets. The Women's Encyclopedia of Myths and Secrets by Barbara G. Walker. Yeah. So that's what I'll be reading from on Monday. Until then, thank you so much for hanging out. Enjoy the rest of your weekend wherever you are. Peace and prosperity to every single one of you.